evening. So we are going to start out this evening talking about LCIP. Does everybody have their LCIP books with them? It's this one here. Okay. All right, thank you very much. So we're back at it. So I just want to talk to this committee about how we go about making our LCIP requests. We can talk about what's in this book for requests, and then we can talk about recommendations. So the first thing, how we go about requesting them, for last year and this year, they're very reactive requests. They're not all that proactive in that we do not have a 5-year capital plan. And if we did, I would feel much better about making requests for LCIP based on a capital plan. So what you see before you last year and this year are very reactive in that there are things that are needed, but there are things that are needed. It's almost like, you go to the ER and you need to stop the bleeding now, and this is what it is. This is what we need. So as an example, we've got McMahon, and Josh can field any technical questions about each project if you have them. But one of them, the very first one, is McMahon parking expansion. We also have the Dingley Safety and Security Project. We have the system-wide camera upgrade, which is a continuation project from last year. We have LMS mechanical HVAC and control systems upgrade. That is a big, heavy price tag on this project. But we literally, one of our boilers went down, and we've done what I call a patch job to get us through this winter. And that patch job won't last forever. So we're going to have a dialogue about that at some point, like the specifics of that project. If we continue on, we also have asked for a district-wide paving project just to keep up all of our parking lots. We have a green ladle renovation project that's been on the books for quite some time, and we keep moving that project out. We have a Longley door replacement and security system upgrade. That project also has been on the books, but it's never been properly funded. So we haven't even begun that project yet. And then we've got a Dingley basement redesign project, and that ends the requests for last year. I'll take questions.
Yeah, I've been involved with the LCIP from planning's perspective for years, and I mean, it's a 5-year planning project, and it's about capital expenditure. I mean, there are some things that I think ought to, not in this group, there are some things that ought to probably be in operations, but this is stuff that needs to move forward, bigger ticket items. I'm sure that when we really sit down and go through it, and Josh, I'm sure, knows that there's many, many other things that need to happen. Dingley's roof, we're going to find all kinds of other things, and we need to build a priority list. And I'm hoping that the facilities committee can do that so that we can give you a 5-year plan. 2021 is probably pretty much set. We're not going to be able to change that much. But the next 4 years beyond that, I'm hoping that we can expand this significantly. Because when you look at it, the public works and the fire department, the police department, I mean, some of these projects have been on the books for years. I've got LCIPs back into the late 90s that I've kept. And it's interesting, some of that stuff just, it gets bumped. So we've got to ask, we've got to fight for it. That's something that, we really have got to make a priority, how we fight for some of this stuff, because I think we've been like the poor red-headed child here in many respects from the city council standpoint. So I'm hoping we can get some additional stuff in here.
Thank you. I really appreciate that sentiment. I'm right there with you. I look forward to developing that plan through the facilities committee. We really need it. It's needed, and it lends greater credibility to our requests, which we don't all have all that much right now. I will say that the TRC assessments, threat assessments that were done in each one of our buildings, the projects that are based on that, those are. I consider those to be there's some teeth behind that. We've got a report behind that that tells us what is needed. You know, I really look forward to the day when we can talk about paving as an example and really have a really good idea. And I know, Josh, you do know paving, but you're not the expert in paving. And if we can have it on a rotational basis and we just know our parking lots are taken care of, that's just one. That's one thing, right? I mean, we've got so many of those things. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm excited about that. So I don't know how you want to progress forward. I know that the city has some concerns about the requests, the number of requests that we've made, the total amount, and I understand that. In working with Superintendent Finn and Josh, we've gone through the projects, and if you get to a place where you'd like a recommendation from us as far as what we would prioritize in the list of projects, if it's your wish, to remove some of these projects, we can certainly help with that.
So as Bobby just mentioned, the City Council has received the recommendations from the Finance Committee and the Planning Board on the school department request. Initially, it looks like the Finance Committee recommended not to fund any requested projects through the LCIP. They would have preferred that fund balance be used to fund all capital instead of operating. So just so that's transparent, they also felt that the scope and budgetary amount for safety and security was excessive, was their opinion. So that was received and approved, as it tends to be every year in this process, by the City Council. The Planning Board also made a recommendation to reduce the total request from 1.155 million to $500,000, but I'm not seeing what specifically they were hoping to take out in this resolve. So I apologize for not having that handy, but in case folks are interested what's going on on those two sides of the aisle. And just a question for Bobby. I believe you met with members of the Finance Committee post this recommendation coming out. Is that correct?
I did meet with them. I wasn't privy to what they were going to recommend, so I am curious to know what that entails, what their thoughts are about that. But yes, I did meet with them, and it was a great meeting.
So, hearing that, is it still our intention to go move forward and ask for everything and push for all of it? Or is this a preliminary that we're actually going to be looking at individually and deciding what we're going to put forward? Where does it stand with that?
Yes, so what you would do as a full committee is have a discussion about the projects. You'd make a determination. You know what the Finance Committee is recommending to some degree. If we could have that broken out, that would be great. But you would have a dialogue about what it is that, what your strategy is, what you would like to do. Do you want to push them all forward, even though the Finance Committee has made a recommendation? Do you want to talk about individual projects? And it really is wide open. You really can design this the way that you want. We do typically, listen to what the Finance Committee has to say. We do typically take into consideration the City Council as well. However, on the flip side of that, we do have needs in this district, and so it's really up to your purview as to how you want to proceed with this.
I'm just going to say, I can offer more information on how this fits into the city scheme if that's helpful, if you have a specific question, but I do need to be pointed in a little bit of a direction.
Yeah, I just have some overriding issues here, and that is that You know, I watched the school department fall apart across the river because we kept destroying CIP year after year after year, 10 years in a row. And now they're picking up the pieces over there. And where this city and this school department's in such a good position right now between new buildings and rehabilitated buildings that we should make it a point to stay on top of it. So the question I have is, do we actually have a full list of all of our needs?
The answer is no. That's where that facilities assessment is going to come in. I will say, I've said this before, and it is embarrassing for me to say this. Um, this isn't how I would want to go before City Council to make these requests. I would really like to have that facilities assessment done. And to Member Damon's, point that it's really important that we can prioritize that list, and we haven't done that. So these requests are really based on reactionary. It doesn't mean that we don't need them, because we do. And it doesn't mean that our boiler at LMS is going to hold up for 2 more years, because I don't think it's going to. And so we may come before you for that. Um, it really is critical that we get that work done through the facilities subcommittee so that we can be well informed. So right now, I don't think that we're probably 50% informed, like we're not 100% well informed on this. And it just makes sense to me that some of this we might hold off on until we have that facilities condition done so that we could make really well informed decisions.
So yeah, and I'm just looking at the whole CIP here, and it just amazes me, very similar to Auburn, that, you have a request of full CIP in the city, and the school looks like it's all of 5% when we carry 50% of the assets of the city. And this is what happened in Auburn, and same thing, that we have to be real on the amount of assets that we have to protect and build. So I really would like to see an accelerated motion here to get this information as fast as we can and get a really, really good picture of it and be aggressive in lobbying for this. That, I don't think 1.1 million is it's a drop in the bucket, from a city council's point of view and from everything else they're viewing. So that's just my opinion, and I just throwing out that warning that if we drag our feet on this, if we take too much political flack, well, we're just going to pay the price later in a worse way.
I'd like to thank you for that.
Realistically, how long would it take for that assessment? When would it happen? Oh, sorry. There's a big sigh over here.
Um, Josh, we have 10 buildings?
Approximately.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be it would have to be, a building by building assessment. Some of them, like Connors, it's simple, it's new, there's not much there. Look at the middle school, it's gonna take a long time to develop. It take several months, I think, to develop one, even a good plan for that one, in spite of the work that Josh and Siemens has done so far. That's a very complicated system. I think that, when you look at trying to analyze 10 full buildings plus the buildings and grounds around them, because it's all well and good to talk about the building, but the paving, the parking lots, the fields, and all of that are really part of what we're offering, what we're required, really, to provide for the student body. And it's going to take some time to develop that. I don't think there's any way possible we can have that developed for the presentation for May 1, especially under the current circumstances. I just see that as not possible. But I'll be embarrassed if we don't have a really solid plan by the end of this of 2020, so that when we get ready to start to present this LCIP in January, that we're going to have a real solid base to really propose a laundry list. And when we talk about paving, I mean, our parking lots suffer the same damage that the roadways do. If you look at the paving budgets for the city, it's always fallen behind, but it's still hugely larger than what we're asking about. And the same holds true with the buildings. There's been an awful lot of work done on the other city buildings. I bet you we have 3 times the square footage that the rest of the city combined has. I don't know exactly. That's one of the things that we're going to have to develop. How many square foot of real estate do we actually control? If you stop to think about how small most of the city buildings are in comparison to the schools, I mean, Ron's right. I mean, we got hugely more real estate and much more infrastructure that we're trying to propose. And, you know, and it never ceases to amaze me how when there's an accident, they can find $900,000 instantly for a fire truck. But yet when we're asking for something like security and, you know, and cameras, I think the camera budget, well, I know for a fact that the radios for 911, in excess of $5 million. And didn't blink an eye for that one. So when we're asking for $1.1 million, it's just. But anyway, I mean, and I know that you know, some people are you know, and it's important that we have those, but this is important too. I don't think that this can necessarily just play second fiddle to other stuff that's, you know, because this is our future.
If you would, I don't want to have a debate between city council and the school committee. I think that addressing what is needed for the school is appropriate. So Felicia, you have something to say that is not like a, you know, okay, good, thank you.
I mean, that's what I was going to start with, but okay. I don't think this is oppositional in any way, but so there is a bond limit at the city of 80%. So that's 7.27 million for this upcoming year. And currently we're at 10.9 million. So we need about a little over a 30% reduction. And so as we're considering the school department as a part of that, considering 30% reduction, is there a way for us to help with that? Is the question. Most of the stuff that's happening at the city has also been deferred quite a while or debated for quite a while. And so it's not that we is the wrong word. It's not that it's just looked at and dismissed that the school department doesn't have needs. We need to have really strong cases, and I think doing the facilities assessment will tee us up really well for that in the future. But in the past, we have not always had the strongest case that was universally understood for moving projects forward. I think we're getting there now, especially with the 2 folks who are working on this and will continue to work on this. I think the facilities assessment is going to be very key. But in the whole scheme of things, looking at over a 30% reduction in the LCIP, either through funding through operating or through eliminating or deferring those projects. We're back with the mayor was on the council that set the 80% bond limit, so I highly doubt we're going to go over it in this year. I think we did go over it last year, and that required a 5-person vote in favor of that, which is really hard to get as well. So it's just in the scheme of things, that's where we're at.
Just a quick question, Bobby. The reporting on all of the debt service is going to come out on Article, where are we here? Article 10.
Did that last time.
Yeah, so nothing comes out on any of the other articles on the CIP.
So the LCIP is part of the facilities budget, Article 9, and then all other debt service like bonds and such are Article 10. We'll need some direction at some point from all of you as to what's that.
My question is, we have on the agenda to receive and support the presentation of the Lewiston Capital Improvement Plan as recommended to the Lewiston City Council. So we'll discuss that as an agenda item. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
So
that might be your direction.
if we're ready to move into a recommendation, we can certainly do that. So one of the big projects that we have identified through our TRC report, but not only our TRC report, but also people, boots on the ground people, administrators, staff, and that is our security camera project that we have going. We did at one point ask, and this was last year, ask for all of that to be funded in last year's LCIP. And with some negotiating between the city and the school department, we agreed to move that out and do that, phase that over 3 years. I would highly, so we do have phase one, that's from last year, that we get to work on. This is just under $1 million worth of cameras. Our cameras are super, 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 super outdated. Many of them do not work. They're not tied in, well, at the high school at least, they are tied into the LPD. However, they really struggle at the police department to be able to use those cameras and to see because they don't work. So I'm really recommending that we maintain that LCIP request for FY21, which is the second phase of this camera project. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. The other item that I would recommend is the Dingley Safety and Security Project. We are quite vulnerable at this building. There are some areas in there, and I did bring the cost breakdown that we could negotiate on to carve some of the pricing out of that, the cost out of that. But there are some things that are non-negotiables in our opinion, and it's our recommendation that we don't cut out some of these things. Those are the two projects that I really would ask the school committee to consider supporting. 2 projects minimum.
How urgent is the need for the parking situation to be fixed at McMahon?
That is quite a complex project, and I'm going to let Josh talk about the details of that. But to Member Damon's point that this project alone, when we talk about grounds and we talk about paving and parking and all of that, we have to consider wetlands too. And this project has wetlands attached to it, and that's what drives the cost of this up. So when we're doing our facilities assessment, it isn't just about the structure of our buildings, it is about our grounds, it is about what we have for wetlands, what do we need for expanding parking as an example in this case. There's a lot that goes into that assessment. But Josh, I'm going to turn it over to you and you can talk about the details.
Essentially what's going on and what I'm looking for right now is our description on McMahon, and for some reason I can't find it. I have the numbers of how many staff on site and how many parking spots we have based on staff that's assigned to that building, plus the support staff that travels in and out of the building, custodial staff, nutrition staff. We are already under what we need for parking spots. What compounded things for us and what caused this LCIP to be put together is the fact that the city has taken North Temple Street and removed on-street parking. They have turned what used to be on-street parking into a turn-in only lane. And the intention is to basically stop the congestion that was going on at the entrance at drop-off and dismissal time. So to alleviate that issue, what they did was exactly what I said, turn the parking lane into a turning lane. So we no longer cannot support our staff that visits the school on a day-to-day basis, but we can't support parents and guardians, brothers, sisters, you name it. We don't have any place for them to park when they want to come in and interact with their children. So award ceremonies, things of that nature, we've had to stagger those and kind of split those up, and we still don't have parking. So essentially what the plan is to add, and I can't find my sheet, unfortunately, add parking spots in the back side of the school. And what that would do is give us the spaces we need. I want to say we're adding 90 spaces. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you very much. Here we go. So we have 131 staff and 115 parking spots. That's what I wanted to say. So what we're looking at doing is adding those parking spots in the back. Unfortunately, like a majority of our schools, the school is surrounded by wetlands, so it makes any kind of construction project in that area extremely more expensive. So to get to the $600,000, we worked with an architect who we've been working with recently to come up with our worst case scenario to put that in there. We haven't invested the money to do the full engineering survey, so that price is their worst case estimate for making that happen. Obviously, as we do the engineering, that cost could go up, could go down. In this economy, most every construction project is typically going over budget. So that's pretty much how we landed at what we landed at for that project. Any questions on that?
That help, Mr. Donovan? Did that answer your question? Okay. Mr. Damon?
Josh, correct me if I'm wrong too, when we looked at the expansion of the parking facility at the high school, I think we calculated that each individual parking space, when you added it, was roughly $20,000, something like that, when we first put it out. So the fact that you're adding 80 parking spaces for $600,000 would appear that that's, you know, that's pretty conservative, and that if we can do it for that, that seems like that's more than appropriate. So that seems to be where we're at with most of those. I remember that when we talked about the expansion of the parking lot at the high school, it was grossly over budget initially. And I think we got like 40 extra spaces for about $800,000, something like that. And there really weren't wetlands involved with that, so that number seems more than, you know, a good deal.
Josh, I just want to know the process. I mean, obviously coming in after the fact. When the city decides they're going to do something like this, obviously there's going to be an impact. Were we present? Were we inputting to the council what the impact to the school would be at that point?
Yes, sir, we were. We had multiple meetings on site with city representatives and school representatives at McMahon, specifically to, or in response, I should say, to the neighbors' complaints, which have been frequent and many, about people turning around over their lawns and parking in their lawns and knocking their mailboxes over, and that it only gets worse in the wintertime as snowbanks start piling up. So we did have that opportunity to explain the ramifications of what was going to happen by changing that lane. It didn't stop them, but it did give us a little bit of time to try and figure things out and get this additional parking added by putting up the no parking signs and then covering them. So they are not currently enforcing the no parking, but they will, I believe, at the start of the next school year. So they did at least help us that way.
And additionally, I mentioned it in my city council report out at the school committee meeting before we voted on it, but it was last term, so you all wouldn't have been here for it, but did my best.
I'm asking, so I'm going back to the beginning. If the boiler project is so important, why is it not one of the two that you're requesting?
It was made very clear to me that these requests were an awful lot and that the boiler project, I think, is $3.5 million. I believe we can stretch that out. I think we asked for it. Yes, we asked for it in 2022. I think we can stretch out our patch job. I don't know what else to call it, for another year. But this is a substantial amount of money that we're asking for. And to Member Ray, I think you had talked about the 80% cap. We're over that, city and school-wide together.
I am, while I'm new to this question might seem silly, but if we, wait the year and let's say things go south and it breaks, what options do we have for intervening and paying for that? Or would it be another patch job, or how would we go about that?
So, just being candid, we do a lot of that patch job work right now. It's not really what we should be doing. I'm going to let Josh talk about the technical components of that boiler, but I can tell you that we would have a very difficult time, like if it went today, like it did go at the beginning of the winter season this year, and we scurried really quickly to try to figure out a way so that we didn't have to spend $3.5 million this year, um, so that we could buy some time to do better planning. It's our time is running out. There's a lot of projects in this district where time is running out, but we are doing our very best to make it work with what we've got for resources. But Josh, why don't you, if you wouldn't mind, talking about that job a little?
So to answer your initial question, then I'll expand on that. What would happen is we have 3 boilers on site at that building. 1 small boiler, 2 large boilers. One of the large boilers is what failed. It was, for lack of a better term, rebuilt with all new guts, but the burner's the same, the controls are the same, the jacket's the same, the breeching is the same. That boiler should last us a while. The other boilers are heading right down the same path that happened to this boiler. In addition to that, well, let me get back to you. So if we had a catastrophic failure of those boilers, the answer on how we heat that building is a mobile boiler unit at that point, which would be steam, which would be parked in the back parking lot. We would reconnect the gas or redirect the gas into this boiler, use temporary piping to connect the building to the new boiler plant outside, and we'd be up and running. But that's a budget or an expense we haven't budgeted for. So the reason I'm going to expand on why the cost is so high. When we did when we did the expansion of the middle school's front office, library, and all of those things, initially the plan was to remove the entire steam system and convert it to hot water. That project was over budget. They did basically a half and a half. They converted some of the building to hot water and left some remaining steam. This LCIP that's in place or being requested now, in addition to getting us new boilers, which would be much more reliable, and the boiler we just invested in could become backup because it can be converted to a hot water boiler to support a hot water system. The issue is getting rid of the rest of the steam. So this project not only takes care of the heart of the plant, which is the boilers, but it changes the pumps, it changes a lot of the equipment in the space. In addition to that, it also brings a lot of the spaces up to code because we're not currently providing ventilation air to some of those spaces. We're using older technology, older designs, codes that weren't even in place then that are in place now. We have to bring everything up to code, and it's a full service upgrade of those systems. And now here comes the scary part. So we've had 2 major instances at that school in the last, let's say, 5 years. The most recent one was the middle of last winter that we were still cleaning up when school started this year. Those steam pipes, a majority of them are original, and they leak. And they don't exactly run those down the middle of the hallway where you see a leak. So what ends up happening is a leak will go undetected for an unknown amount of time, like underneath the stage in the auditorium, which causes mold, which then we lose that space, both for the students, which is awful, and in addition, it's a revenue generating space. So that goes away. So we can't support our community, we can't support the students, and we just took away some money that would typically come in for leasing that space out. Getting rid of that steam fixes all of those problems. And what's in this LCIP is a comprehensive look at all of those issues and correcting them at the same time.
So the phase 1 isn't even done, right? Phase 1 is the patch, or phase 1 is what you're asking?
No. So the request is actually, it's pushed out to 2022. That's the project.
I'm looking at the narrative, and the first part says phase 1, which includes the complete resectioning of one of the existing boilers at the middle school. That's not even done right now?
That is complete.
That is, okay. So with that, with this phase one in place, you will have the current slightly leaking boiler in place, a rebuilt boiler, as well as a smaller boiler to serve your immediate heating needs. That's where we're at.
That is where we are currently today.
So unacceptable. Thank you. Because of you. I'm just saying that we allow our children to be in these spaces that we don't know if they will be healthy for them in the long term.
I really want to reinforce what Josh has said. Um, I've worked in this industry for almost 50 years, and much of what has happened to that building is something that we're doing away with everywhere. City Hall was like that up until about 10 years ago. It just as a point of reference, City Hall was the steam system like that, much of the piping all corroded and bad spots. City Hall had a thermostat in the city clerk's office. It's a 3.5-story building. And when we replaced the boilers there, we didn't even convert from oil to gas. It was already gas. And we reduced the operating cost of that building, and that's a significantly smaller building. We reduced the operating cost from $47,000 a year to $17,000 a year. We actually got it under control, so they weren't leaving the windows open most of the time. And that building, that project alone for that smaller building was almost $800,000, and that was nearly 10 years ago. So that today that would probably be $1.2, $1.3 million. And that's exactly what we did. We got rid of all that old steam piping. That whole building was converted to hot water, and that's what we're doing everywhere. I'm doing 2 projects currently at AmHigh. Exact same thing. Getting rid of the steam because it's old technology and inefficient. So that really is what needs to ultimately happen to that building. And I think that other than the middle school, I think the high school still has some steam, doesn't it? Does it, Josh? That's gone. Okay, but the middle school is certainly.
Just about every other school. Don't quote me on the years, but within the last 5 to 7 years, we've invested, or the school department has invested, a tremendous amount of money in upgrading the boilers in all of our buildings. The middle school is the last one that doesn't have that. Some of our older schools do have some issues that are similar to what the middle school has in having pneumatic controls, which are extremely unreliable and have their own issues, and you're spinning an air compressor to do what electrons can do for you. So these are all great ideas on how to reduce operating costs. And naively, when I started this position, I was all gung-ho and ready to come in here and start being able to slash all of our utility costs. And we are not in a position to even look at those things because we are currently in the reactive mode. So these kinds of projects are exactly what we're talking about to get us into a proactive mode and start reducing our operational expenses. If you take a look at our buildings and you look at per square footage, you will very quickly notice how inefficient some of our older buildings are and how much additional utility costs there are in those buildings by square foot compared to our newer buildings.
I just really want to echo what you were saying. I mean, I don't know how we can go. How can we go another year knowing that this is going on? I just kind of wanted to echo that sentiment. I don't really have anything to add.
Bobby, what's our total asset value for the Lewiston School Department?
I don't know it off the top of my head. I'll have to get it for you.
Okay, yeah, if I could get that, and I didn't see the total. What's the total that we requested in this year?
For the LMS.
No, for all of it, for all,
Oh,
the whole
for all of that.
CIP.
So the Dingley safety, I don't know that off the top of my head, but it's $255,000 for the safety. It's $600,000 for McMahon. Alicia, I think you've got it. It's 1.1.
1.155 million.
Yep. Thank you.
But I'm confused because we got $3.5 million showing for the Lewiston Middle School piece. Different year. Okay, got it. Okay. I would just like to see the percentage of what we're requesting in ratio to the total asset value of the school department.
I wanted to ask about the Dingley security upgrades. Um, if I recall correctly, we're talking about some new lighting outside of the building. Um, I'm a little concerned about adding lighting if it doesn't have a particular purpose, and it seemed like the basic gist of it was we're less likely to have people that some folks don't want here on the property overnight. Has there been any kind of actual damage or danger to anyone as a result of that?
Those are really good questions. We have learned through our consultants with TRC that lighting is actually the #1 deterrent for anybody that, or perpetrators, actually over cameras. So they do recommend that we do lighting first. As far as danger, yes, we've had multiple people, myself included. In part, some of that stems from our location, as far as, you know, being directly across from the bus station. There's a lot of transients that come through. I can tell you that leaving this building, I think we all know, and I would encourage all of us to pay attention when we do leave at nighttime, just how dim the lighting is around this building. That's one component of this request. There are other components of this request as well.
Yeah, if I could ask about some of the other components too. And so, but specifically on the lighting, it sounds like what you're describing is lighting for the time between when it gets dark outside and when the last people are leaving this building, or are we talking about, you know, lights on around this building all night long?
So my idea is that lights are going to be on at nighttime, not shut off at nighttime. So not like on a timer, not just until the last person leaves. It's very important. It's my recommendation that this building be a very secure building, much more than what it is.
So I also wanted to ask about the recommendations for Dingley security in comparison to the security apparatus at City Hall. And, you know, I think that obviously this district operates a lot of buildings where security has to be paramount. We have school children in schools, and people are entrusting us with their care. And so we can't make a lot of compromises about keeping schools secure for any particular reason. But the Dingley building doesn't generally house school children, and it is a building where public business is being conducted, and I worry about the prospect of creating an environment that is unduly restrictive for members of the public trying to access and use a public building.
Thank you for that. I don't consider lighting to be restrictive. Yeah. I can tell you that this building it's used all day long. We house a lot, not just staff, but we hold professional development here. There's a lot of meetings that go on in this building, and I do it is a public building, and I do think that you make a good point about that. Because it's a public building, I do think that we need to be mindful about the security of this building. I think that the request that is here is not making this building feel like a fortress or feel like it's not I don't remember what you called it, but I think it would still feel pleasant to come to. It really is about maintaining the security of staff as well as any of our guests that come in and out of this building.
I know that we had the Dingley program here, and the students here in the building at the time. TRC did their investigation or whatever. Do you know if the cost of what they recommended at the building at that time, would it be any lower now that we don't have students here?
No, it would not. No.
So I'm actually in support of keeping this as it stands. It sounds like there was a study done, and the evidence we normally ask for is there and given to us by a professional. I am not a security professional, so I'm trusting this person and their role, as well as also receiving feedback from staff about how they feel coming to our meetings as employees of this district, because they do have to leave here late at night often because we all talk and talk a lot. The interesting part in here was about the server room and how technology is accessed. Have we had issues with that before is my question.
So I'm not sure if we've had issues with that. I really can't answer that 100%. I can tell you that that server room should be locked down. It should be secure. That's where all of our information flows through, and it is not secure right. And I'm not even supposed to say that, but we've got it locked down, but it needs to be locked down better than it is.
And then just about the lighting, I do want to be cognizant that there are apartment buildings right around here. There's no other residential, I don't believe, but I've had many meetings over in that area with constituents and residents, so just being careful that we don't light up their bedrooms at night.
It's a good point.
Just the place I work at, I just want to echo the need for a lockdown security, enhanced security around our server room. Like I have a key fob to get into work, but there's another key fob and then another key fob just to get into the server room, and then once you get in there, everything's locked. So I mean, it's it's a bank. We have, and I think the school has a very we have a duty to protect that data, and if it's not physically secure, that's an issue. It needs to be as physically secure as possible. And some of the other things I see in here, like duress alarms, that's ubiquitous at banks. But I think it also should be here as well in case the need arises. I support keeping this ask 100%.
We have about 5 minutes left. Are there other questions? Can we take 5 minutes to get ourselves sorted out before the meeting? Are we all set? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.